The stroke of a pen on paper is a quiet action, but when that pen is held by the President of the United States, a single signature carries the force of law for hundreds of millions of people. We tend to carve our leaders into marble, treating them as infallible heroes who stand above the rest of us. But behind the monuments and the myths are human beings carrying all the usual human baggage: ego, paranoia, and spite. Because the Constitution places the entire executive branch under the control of one person, a single miscalculation in the Oval Office can strip away civil liberties, crash the financial system, or even tear the country apart. The American story involves surviving foreign enemies, yes, but a closer look at history reveals the nation's greatest test has often been surviving the catastrophic blunders of its own commanders-in-chief. The ink was barely dry on the nation's founding document before paranoia set into the executive branch. John Adams, the second president, faced intense political criticism during a period of high tension with France. Instead of navigating the criticism, Adams let his fear of dissent drive his policy. He signed the Alien and Sedition Acts, a package of laws that directly attacked the personal freedoms the new republic was supposed to protect. The most aggressive of these was the Sedition Act. It made it a federal crime to publish any false or malicious statements about the government. In practice, this meant Adams could imprison citizens and political rivals simply for speaking out against his administration. He proved that in the right climate of fear, the executive branch could and would criminalize opposition, tossing the First Amendment aside to maintain its grip on power. While Adams used the law to punish his critics, other presidents have used the economy to punish their enemies. Thomas Jefferson attempted to force Great Britain and France to respect American neutrality during the Napoleonic Wars by cutting them off entirely. He pushed through the Embargo Act of 1807, freezing all American trade with Europe. This political cartoon from the era illustrates the backlash. You can see a merchant trying to carry a barrel of goods, only to be bitten by a giant snapping turtle named Oh Grab Me, which is embargo spelled backwards. Instead of starving Europe, the policy completely paralyzed American shipping and bankrupted domestic merchants. A few decades later, Andrew Jackson brought an intense personal hatred of elite financial institutions into the White House. He believed the wealthy were manipulating the system against the common man. Jackson directed his spite squarely at the Second Bank of the United States. Viewing it as corrupt, he vetoed legislation that would have kept it running, intentionally dismantling the central pillar of the country's financial system. This illustration captures the panic that followed. By destroying the bank and forcing aggressive hard money policies, Jackson destabilized the currency. This triggered the Panic of 1837, a depression that left banks collapsed and citizens destitute in the streets. When executive policy is driven by personal vengeance, laborers and farmers are the ones left to navigate the resulting wreckage. Executive overreach is dangerous, but the Oval Office has also shown us that doing absolutely nothing can be just as deadly. James Buchanan inherited a country that was violently fracturing. By the late 1850s, the tension between free states and slave states had reached a boiling point over whether new Western territories would allow slavery. Buchanan personally despised abolitionists and believed the Constitution explicitly protected slavery. So, as Southern states began openly preparing to secede from the Union, he chose a path of complete paralysis. He argued that secession was illegal, but also claimed he had no constitutional power to stop it. His total surrender of executive leadership created a vacuum. During his term, the Supreme Court issued the Dred Scott decision, ruling that Congress could not ban slavery in the territories. Buchanan did nothing to manage the fallout, as the ruling polarized the nation beyond repair. By the time Buchanan left office, his refusal to intervene allowed the secession movement to transition to a military reality, leaving the nation with no path forward but a civil war. Our final category of failure occurs when a president values his own political survival over the rights of the citizens he has sworn to protect. Rutherford B. Hayes faced a constitutional crisis during the fiercely disputed presidential election of 1876. The results were so contested that the country faced the very real threat of plunging right back into violent conflict. This political illustration, showing hands resting on a pistol over a document labeled Tilden or Blood, highlights exactly how high the stakes were. To win the White House and pacify his opponents, Hayes agreed to the Compromise of 1877, a backroom deal where he promised to withdraw federal troops from the South. Those troops were the only enforcement mechanism protecting the civil and voting rights of newly freed African Americans during Reconstruction. The moment Hayes pulled them out, those protections collapsed. Hayes secured his 4-year term in office, but the trade-off was devastating. He bartered away the freedom of millions of citizens, directly enabling the establishment of Jim Crow laws and a century of systemic segregation. Imprisoned critics, destroyed livelihoods, a fractured union, decades of systemic segregation. The collateral damage of these decisions is written into the foundation of the country. The people elevated to the highest office in the land are not mythological figures. They are susceptible to the same pride, fear, cowardice, and ambition as anyone else. They just happen to hold the power to inflict those flaws on an entire population. The durability of the United States doesn't actually come from a continuous line of brilliant leadership. It comes from the societal and constitutional resilience required to survive the worst mistakes of the people in charge. Which of these presidential blunders do you think left the deepest scar on American history? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the past.